The transport ship dropped Kate Morrison off at the research station just as the twin suns of Kalara began to set. She stood on the landing platform with her single bag, watching the ship disappear into the orange sky. The air smelled strange here. It carried a wild scent that made her skin prickle. Commander Jake Sullivan walked out to meet her. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes. His uniform showed patches where claws had torn the fabric. "Dr. Morrison," he said, shaking her hand. "Welcome to Station 7. I wish the circumstances were better." Kate nodded. She knew about Dr. Ben Hayes. The Vorthak had found him outside the perimeter 2 weeks ago. They brought him back alive, but barely. The wounds on his arms would never fully heal. "How is he doing?" Kate asked. "He will live. But he will not be coming back to Kalara. That makes you our new behavioral specialist." Jake led her through the main gate. The station was smaller than Kate expected. 4 metal buildings sat inside a tall fence, topped with electric wire. Guard towers rose at each corner, with automated guns that tracked movement in the forest beyond. "The Vorthak are different from anything we have studied before," Jake said as they walked. "They hunt in packs of 12 to 20 adults. Each pack controls about 50 square miles of territory. They are smart, fast, and they never give up once they start hunting." Kate had read the files during her journey to Kalara. The Vorthak looked like wolves, but they stood as tall as horses. Their teeth could crush steel. Their claws could cut through rock. Most dangerous of all, they planned their attacks like human soldiers. "How many packs live around the station?" Kate asked. 3 that we know of, maybe more. They stay away from us most of the time, but they are getting bolder. That is why Dr. Hayes was attacked. He was checking sensors only 50 yards from the fence. They entered the main building. Dr. Amy Chen looked up from her computer screen. She was a small woman with short black hair and quick movements. Her lab coat had burn marks from chemical spills. "You must be Kate," Amy said. "I hope you brought strong nerves. The Vorthak have been testing our defenses every night this week." "Testing how?" Kate asked. Dr. Matt Rodriguez answered from across the room. He was young, maybe 25, with the pale skin of someone who spent too much time indoors. Banks of communication equipment surrounded his desk. "They probe different sections of the fence," Matt said. "Never the same place twice. They are looking for weak spots." "Or they are just curious," Kate said. Jake and Amy exchanged looks. "Curious is not a word we use for the Vorthak," Jake said. "Hungry, yes. Territorial, yes. But curious?" He shook his head. Kate did not argue, but she had read every report about Kalara. The Vorthak showed problem-solving abilities that suggested more than simple hunting instincts. They used tools. They modified their environment. They even seemed to have some form of culture. Jake showed Kate to her quarters in Building 3. The room was small but clean. A narrow bed sat against one wall. A desk and chair filled the opposite corner. A small window looked out toward the forest. "Dinner is at 6, Jake said. "Try to get some rest. Tomorrow we start your real education about this place." After Jake left, Kate unpacked her bag. She had brought only the basics: 3 changes of clothes, personal hygiene items, a few books on animal behavior, and one item that meant more to her than all the rest combined. Kate pulled out her pillow and held it for a moment. It was old and worn, covered in soft blue fabric that had faded over the years. She had owned it since childhood. It had been with her through college, through her graduate studies, through every assignment on distant worlds. Other researchers thought it was silly to bring personal comfort items to dangerous places. They said it showed weakness or lack of focus, but Kate knew better. In a place like Kalara, surrounded by creatures that wanted to kill her, she needed something that reminded her of home. She placed the pillow on her bed and smoothed out the cover. The fabric felt warm under her fingers, even though the room was cool. A howl echoed from the forest. Then another. Soon the night filled with the voices of the Vorthak. Kate went to her window and looked out. She could see nothing in the darkness beyond the fence, but she knew they were there, watching, waiting. Matt's voice came over the intercom system. "All personnel, this is Control. We have multiple contacts outside the perimeter. Stay inside your buildings until further notice. Kate turned away from the window. She had studied predators on 6 different worlds, but never anything like the Vorthak. Every other species she had worked with showed some capacity for peaceful interaction. Even the ice bears of Fennel could be managed with the right approach. But the Vorthak seemed different. Every report described them as pure killers. They had no natural enemies except each other. They feared nothing. They showed no mercy to prey animals. They attacked anything that entered their territory. Kate sat on her bed and opened one of her books. She tried to focus on the text, but the howling outside made concentration impossible. The sounds were not random. They followed patterns, almost like a conversation between the different packs. She closed the book and lay down. The pillow cradled her head perfectly, just as it had for the past 15 years. The familiar scent of home fabric softener still clung to it faintly. Another howl rose from the forest, closer this time. Kate felt her heart speed up. Tomorrow she would begin studying the most dangerous predators in known space. She would try to understand creatures that had killed dozens of researchers before her. But tonight, she just held her pillow tighter and tried not to think about Dr. Hayes lying in a hospital bed with scars that would never fade. She tried not to think about the electric fence that was the only thing standing between her and the creatures in the darkness. The howling continued until dawn. Kate had been at Station 7 for 3 days when the storm hit. It came without warning, as storms often did on Kalara. One moment the sky was clear, and the next moment lightning split the air and rain fell like bullets against the metal buildings. She sat at her desk, trying to make sense of the data Amy had given her. The Vorthak pack movements made no logical sense. They should have stayed in their territories, but instead, they kept crossing into each other's hunting grounds without fighting. Thunder crashed overhead, the lights flickered, then the power went out completely. "Generator failure," Matt's voice came over the emergency radio. "Working on it now. Stay in your quarters until we get backup power online." Kate felt around in the darkness until she found her flashlight. The small beam cut through the black air in her room. She could hear the wind howling outside, but underneath it was another sound. Scratching. Something was moving around the outside of her building. She went to the window and aimed the flashlight toward the forest. The beam showed only rain and swaying trees. But the scratching continued. It seemed to be coming from above her head. Kate looked up at the ceiling. The scratching was definitely coming from there. Something was in the ventilation system. A loud crash made her jump. A section of ceiling tile fell to the floor, then another. Kate backed against the wall and pointed her flashlight upward. 3 small shapes dropped through the hole in the ceiling. They hit the floor with soft thumps and lay still for a moment. Kate held her breath. The flashlight beam showed her 3 young Vorthak. Cubs, no bigger than large dogs. Their fur was dark gray, almost black when wet from the rain. Their ears were too big for their heads. Their paws looked clumsy and oversized. Kate knew she should press the alarm button. Protocol demanded immediate notification of any Vorthak presence inside the station. But something stopped her. The cubs were shivering. Water dripped from their coats. The smallest one whimpered quietly. They did not look like the killing machines described in the research files. They looked like lost children. The largest cub raised its head and looked directly at Kate. Its eyes reflected the flashlight beam with a golden glow. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Kate expected the cub to bare its teeth or growl. Instead, it just watched her with what looked like curiosity. The cub stood up slowly. Kate tensed, ready to run for the door. But the young Vorthak did not move toward her. Instead, it walked to her bed and sniffed at the pillow. Kate lowered her flashlight slightly. The cub was exploring her pillow with its nose, taking in the scent. Its tail, which had been tucked between its legs, began to wag slightly. Then something amazing happened. The cub climbed onto the bed and curled up on top of Kate's pillow. It made a soft sound, almost like a purr. Its shivering stopped. The 2 smaller cubs watched this with obvious interest. They approached the bed carefully, as if asking permission. The larger cub shifted slightly, making room. Soon all 3 cubs were pressed together on Kate's pillow, breathing slowly and deeply. Kate stood frozen in place. Everything she had learned about the Vorthak said this was impossible. They were supposed to be aggressive from birth. They were supposed to attack anything that was not part of their pack. They were not supposed to seek comfort from humans. But here they were, three young predators sleeping peacefully on her pillow like oversized puppies. Kate moved her desk chair closer to the bed and sat down. She kept the flashlight pointed away from the cubs so it would not wake them. The storm continued outside, but inside her room there was only the sound of quiet breathing. She studied the sleeping cubs in the dim light. Their faces looked almost gentle in sleep. Their claws, which could grow to become deadly weapons, were still small and blunt. Their teeth, barely visible behind relaxed lips, had not yet grown into the bone-crushing fangs of adult Vorthak. The smallest cub made a soft noise and shifted position. It pressed closer to the pillow, nuzzling the fabric with its snout. Kate realized that the cubs were not just using the pillow for warmth. They seemed to find actual comfort in it. Time passed slowly. Kate lost track of how long she sat watching the cubs sleep. The storm began to weaken. The rain changed from a hammering sound to a gentle pattering against the window. Finally, the power came back on. The lights blazed to life, causing Kate to squint. The cubs stirred but did not wake. They seemed too exhausted to care about the sudden brightness. Kate heard footsteps in the hallway outside her room. Someone was doing a check of all the buildings after the storm. She had to make a decision quickly. She could press the alarm button. Security would arrive within minutes. They would tranquilize the cubs and remove them from the station. It was the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that protocol demanded. But looking at the three small creatures sleeping so peacefully on her pillow, Kate could not bring herself to do it. Instead, she turned off the overhead lights and moved to her desk. She pulled out a notebook and began to write. She documented everything she had observed, the cubs' behavior when they first fell through the ceiling, the way they had approached the bed, how they had arranged themselves on the pillow. Every few minutes she looked back at the bed. The cubs remained deeply asleep. They looked so innocent that it was hard to believe they would grow up to become the most feared predators in known space. Kate wrote until dawn. When the first sunlight came through her window, the cubs began to stir. They yawned and stretched, just like earth dogs waking up from a nap. The largest cub looked at Kate again. This time, its expression seemed different. Less fearful, more trusting. It stood up on the bed and took a step toward her. Kate held perfectly still. The cub came close enough to sniff her hand. Its nose was cold and wet. After a moment, it returned to the pillow and settled down again. The door to Kate's room had a small gap at the bottom. She heard voices in the hallway as the other researchers began their morning routines. Soon someone would check on her. Soon she would have to explain why her ceiling was damaged and her room smelled like wet Vorthak. But for now, she just sat and watched the cubs sleep on her pillow. And she began to wonder if everything the research files said about the Vorthak might be wrong. Kate told everyone that a tree branch had broken through her ceiling during the storm. Jake sent a repair crew to fix the hole, but Kate made sure the cubs were hiding in her closet when the workers arrived. For the next week, Kate lived a double life. During the day, she attended meetings and reviewed research data with the team. At night, she secretly cared for three young Vorthak in her quarters. The cubs were stronger now. They no longer shivered constantly or whimpered with hunger. Kate had been sneaking food from the cafeteria, claiming she was doing late-night research and needed extra meals. But the most amazing discovery was how the cubs shared her pillow. Kate first noticed the pattern on the third night. She had been working at her desk when she heard soft movement behind her. When she turned around, she saw the largest cub climbing down from the bed, while the middle-sized cub took its place on the pillow. The exchange was completely peaceful. No fighting, no growling. The first cub simply moved to the floor and curled up on the rug, while the second cub settled onto the pillow with obvious satisfaction. Kate began to time these exchanges. Every 4 hours like clockwork, one cub would give up the pillow to another. They never had to be told when it was their turn. They seemed to have an internal schedule that they all followed perfectly. This behavior made no sense according to everything Kate knew about Vorthak psychology. Adult Vorthak were intensely competitive. They fought over food, territory, and mates. The idea of voluntary sharing was supposed to be impossible for them. But these cubs had created their own system for taking turns with her pillow. They treated it with strange respect, always being careful not to damage the fabric with their claws. When one cub finished its turn, it would gently smooth the pillow with its paws before allowing the next cub to take over. Kate started keeping detailed notes about their behavior. The cubs were learning to trust her. They no longer hid when she moved around the room. The smallest one had even begun following her from her desk to the bed and back again. On the seventh night, Kate made another discovery. She was lying in her own bed, trying to sleep while the cubs rested on the floor, when she heard a strange sound. It was very quiet, almost like humming. Kate sat up and looked toward her pillow. The middle cub was on it, but instead of sleeping, it was making soft vocal sounds. Not growls or whimpers, but something almost musical. The other two cubs were listening with their ears pointed forward. After a few minutes, they began to make similar sounds. Soon all three cubs were humming together in harmony. Kate had never heard anything like it. The research files mentioned that adult Vorthak had complex communication systems, but this sounded different. This sounded like singing. The cubs' song lasted for nearly an hour. When it ended, they settled down to sleep as if nothing unusual had happened. But Kate stayed awake for the rest of the night, wondering what she had witnessed. The next morning, Dr. Amy Chen knocked on Kate's door earlier than usual. Kate barely had time to get the cubs hidden in her closet before opening the door. "Good morning," Amy said, stepping into the room. "I wanted to discuss the new data from Sector 7 before the team meeting." Amy walked toward Kate's desk, but stopped suddenly. She tilted her head and sniffed the air. "What is that smell?" Amy asked. Kate's heart began racing. "What smell?" "It smells like—" Amy paused, thinking. "Like wet fur, and something else. Something wild." Amy walked around the room slowly, following her nose. Kate watched helplessly as Amy approached the closet where the cubs were hiding. "Kate," Amy said quietly, "why does your room smell like Vorthak?" There was no point in lying anymore. Kate sighed and opened the closet door. Three young Vorthak cubs looked out at Amy with wide golden eyes. Amy stepped backward so fast that she almost tripped over Kate's chair. Her face went completely white. "Kate," Amy whispered, "what have you done?" "They were hurt and scared," Kate said quickly. "They fell through my ceiling during the storm. I could not just let them die." Amy stared at the cubs. They stared back at her with obvious curiosity but no fear. The largest one even took a step forward, as if wanting to investigate this new human. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" Amy asked. "If Jake finds out, he will have you arrested. If the cub's mother finds out, she will tear this entire station apart looking for them." "Look at them," Kate said. "Do they look dangerous to you?" Amy looked. The cubs did not look dangerous. They looked like oversized puppies with big ears and clumsy paws. The smallest one was trying to groom its own foot and kept falling over. "They are just babies," Kate continued. "But Amy, you have to see what they do with my pillow. It is incredible." Kate called the cubs out of the closet. They emerged cautiously, watching Amy closely. But when Kate sat on her bed, they immediately came over and began their ritual. The largest cub climbed onto the pillow first. It arranged itself carefully, making sure not to take up too much space. After exactly 4 minutes, it climbed down and made room for the middle cub. Amy watched in complete silence. When the third cub took its turn, her mouth dropped open. "They are taking turns," Amy said. "Vorthak do not take turns. They do not share. They fight for everything." "But these cubs do share," Kate said. "They have been doing this every night for a week. They treat my pillow like it is the most precious thing in the world." Amy moved closer to the bed. The cub on the pillow watched her approach but did not seem alarmed. When Amy slowly reached out her hand, the cub sniffed her fingers gently. "This changes everything we know about Vorthak behavior," Amy said. "If they are capable of sharing and cooperation from a young age, then maybe the adult aggression is learned, not instinctive." "That is what I have been thinking," Kate said. "But I need more time to study them. If we report this now, they will be taken away before I can understand what makes them different." Amy looked from the cubs to Kate and back again. "This is incredibly dangerous, Kate. If anyone finds out..." But think about what we could learn, Kate said. Think about how this could change our understanding of their entire species. Amy was quiet for a long moment. The cubs continued their pillow ritual, completely unaware that their fate was being decided. Finally, Amy spoke. "One more week," she said. "But if anything goes wrong, if anyone gets suspicious, we report them immediately. Agreed?" Kate nodded. "Agreed." Amy headed for the door, then stopped and looked back. "And Kate, next time you decide to adopt 3 baby predators, maybe give me some advance warning." Kate smiled. "I will try to remember that." Kate woke up to the sound of alarms screaming through the station. Red warning lights flashed outside her window. She jumped out of bed and looked toward her pillow, where the smallest cub was sleeping peacefully despite the noise. Matt's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have a massive Vorthak presence at the main gate. I repeat, massive Vorthak presence at the main gate." Kate quickly pulled on her clothes while the 3 cubs watched her with worried expressions. They could sense her fear, and it was making them nervous. The largest cub began to pace back and forth across her room. "Stay here," Kate told them, knowing they could not understand her words but hoping her tone would calm them. "I will be back soon." She ran to the command center where Jake, Amy, and Matt were staring at multiple video screens. Kate felt her blood turn cold when she saw what they were looking at. 20 adult Vorthak stood just outside the station fence. They were the largest predators Kate had ever seen. Each one was bigger than a horse, with muscles that rippled under their dark fur. Their teeth gleamed white in the morning sunlight. But they were not attacking. They were just standing there, watching the station with intelligent golden eyes. "How long have they been there?" Kate asked. "About 10 minutes, Jake replied. "They came out of the forest all at once and formed that line. They have not moved since." "It looks like they are waiting for something," Amy said. Matt adjusted his translation equipment. "I am picking up vocalizations, but they are unlike anything in our database. It almost sounds like they are calling for something." Kate felt sick. She knew exactly what they were calling for. One of the adult Vorthak stepped forward. It was massive, probably the pack leader. It lifted its head and made a series of deep, rumbling sounds that carried clearly across the distance to the station. "That one is female," Amy said, studying the video feed. "And look at her behavior. She's not showing any signs of aggression." Jake turned to look at Amy. "Not showing aggression?" "There are 20 of the deadliest predators in the galaxy standing at our front door. But they are not trying to break in," Amy pointed out. "They could have torn through that fence in seconds if they wanted to. Instead, they are just waiting." The female Vorthak made her calling sound again. This time, Kate heard something that made her heart stop. From her quarters came an answering call, high-pitched and young, but clearly in the same language. Jake spun around to face Kate. "What was that?" I do not know," Kate lied. But Matt was already checking his equipment. The sound came from Building 3, Kate's quarters. Jake's face went white with understanding. "Kate, tell me you did not do what I think you did." Before Kate could answer, her quarters door alarm went off. The cubs were trying to get out. They had heard their mother calling and they wanted to go to her. "Jake, I can explain," Kate started. But Jake was already running toward Building 3 with his weapon drawn. Amy and Matt followed close behind. Kate ran after them, her mind racing for some way to prevent disaster. They reached Kate's room just as the door was opening. The 3 cubs tumbled out into the hallway, calling loudly for their mother. When they saw Jake's weapon, they stopped and huddled together, frightened. Jake stared at the cubs in complete shock. "Kate, what have you done?" "They were hurt and scared," Kate said quickly. "I could not just let them die." "You have been hiding baby Vorthak in your quarters for over a week?" Jake's voice was getting louder. "Do you have any idea what you have done? Their mother has probably been searching for them this entire time. She has brought the whole pack to get them back." The cubs were getting more agitated. They could hear their mother calling from outside, and they wanted to answer. The largest cub started toward the main door of the building. "We have to give them back," Jake said. "Right now, before this turns into a massacre." "Wait," Kate said. "Let me take them out there. If their mother sees that I have been caring for them, maybe she will not attack. Absolutely not, Jake replied. I am not letting you walk into a pack of adult Vorthak. But the cubs had already made the decision for them. They pushed past Jake and ran toward the main door. Kate followed them, with the rest of the team close behind. The cubs burst through the station's front door and ran toward the fence, calling to their mother. The adult Vorthak immediately responded, their voices filling the air with sounds of relief and joy. The female leader approached the fence slowly. She was enormous, but her movements were careful and gentle as she lowered her head to sniff her cubs through the metal bars. Matt, are you getting this? Amy whispered. Every word, Matt replied, adjusting his translation equipment. This is incredible. They are using complex emotional language. I am picking up concepts that translate roughly to relief, love, and gratitude. The mother Vorthak looked up from her cubs and stared directly at Kate. Kate felt her knees go weak. The creature's golden eyes seemed to see straight through her. Then something amazing happened. The mother Vorthak made a soft sound and lowered her head in what could only be described as a bow. She is thanking you, Matt said, his voice full of wonder. She knows you cared for her cubs. The cubs began making excited sounds to their mother. Kate could not understand their language, but their tone was clear. They were telling her about their time at the station. More importantly, they were telling her about the pillow. The smallest cub ran back to Kate and tugged gently on her jacket with its teeth. It wanted her to follow. Kate looked at Jake, who nodded slowly. All right, Jake said. But if this goes wrong... Kate followed the cub back into the station and to her quarters. The young Vorthak went straight to the bed and climbed onto the pillow. It called to its mother, who was still watching through the fence. The mother Vorthak tilted her head, clearly puzzled by her cub's behavior. Kate picked up the pillow with the cub still on it and carried them both outside. The entire pack of adult Vorthak watched silently as Kate approached the fence. The cub demonstrated its pillow ritual for its mother. It arranged itself carefully on the soft fabric, then called to its siblings. The other two cubs ran over and began their turn-taking behavior. The mother Vorthak watched this display with obvious fascination. She made questioning sounds to her cubs, as if asking them to explain what they were doing. Matt's translation equipment was working overtime. She is asking about the soft sleeping place, he reported. The cubs are telling her about sharing and taking turns. These concepts do not exist in Vorthak language. The mother Vorthak looked at Kate again. This time, her expression was different. It was the look of a mother trying to understand something completely new about her own children. She made a series of sounds that Matt translated as nest tender. It was a new word, created on the spot to describe something the Vorthak had never encountered before, a creature that cared for young that were not its own. The other adult Vorthak began to approach the fence, drawn by curiosity. For the first time in recorded history, a pack of Vorthak was showing peaceful interest in humans instead of aggression. Kate realized that her simple act of kindness had opened a door between two species that had never before understood each other. The pillow had become more than just a comfort item. It had become a bridge. 6 months later, Kate stood in what used to be the weapons storage room, watching a young Vorthak cub carefully arrange itself on her pillow. The room had been converted into a special habitat where cubs from different packs could experience what the research team now called comfort care. The station had changed completely. The electric fence was gone. The guard towers had been torn down. In their place stood open-air pavilions where humans and Vorthak could meet safely. Dr. Morrison called Dr. Tony Walsh, one of the new researchers who had arrived to study the comfort care program. The cubs from the Eastern Pack have arrived for their session. Kate nodded and walked to the main pavilion. 3 young Vorthak waited there with their mother, a massive female named Thunder Voice by the translation computers. The cubs watched Kate with eager eyes, clearly excited about their turn with the pillow. It had taken months to understand what had really happened that day when the mother Vorthak came to reclaim her cubs. The pillow had introduced a completely foreign concept to their species, the idea that comfort could be shared willingly without competition. Adult Vorthak had evolved to fight for everything: food, territory, mates, sleeping spots. The strongest took what they wanted, and the weak went without. But Kate's pillow had shown the cubs that there was another way to live. Amy approached with her newest data tablet. Kate, you need to see these numbers. The aggression levels in cubs who have experienced comfort care are down 60% compared to cubs raised in traditional Vorthic families. Kate took the tablet and reviewed the data. It was remarkable. Cubs who had spent time with the pillow were learning to share food, play cooperatively, and resolve conflicts without violence. Their mothers were having to learn entirely new parenting behaviors to deal with these changes. Matt walked over from his expanded communication station. I just finished translating the latest reports from the other packs. Word about the Comfort Care program has spread to every Vorthak group on the continent. We have requests from 12 new packs who want to bring their cubs here. That is wonderful, Kate said, but we need more space and more pillows. This had become an unexpected challenge. Kate's original pillow remained the most popular item in the habitat, but they had tried to introduce other comfort objects. None worked as well. The cubs seemed to sense something special about Kate's pillow that could not be replicated. Jake approached the group. His face showed the strain of the past months, but also satisfaction. The station's mission had changed from studying predator behavior to facilitating interspecies cooperation, and the work was exhausting. Kate, we just received a message from Colony Command. They want to expand the Comfort Care program to other worlds where human-predator conflicts are ongoing. Kate felt both excitement and worry. Are we ready for that? We're still learning so much here. That is why they want you to train other researchers, Jake replied. You would travel to different colonies and teach them how to establish their own comfort care programs. Before Kate could respond, excited chirping sounds came from the habitat room. She hurried back to see what was happening. The 3 cubs from the Eastern Pack had discovered something amazing. The original cubs, now nearly adult-sized but still gentle in their movements, had brought their own offspring to the station. 3 generations of Vorthak were now gathered around Kate's pillow. The grandmother, the original mother who had first come to reclaim her cubs, watched as her daughter demonstrated the pillow ritual to the newest cubs. The tiny babies, no bigger than house cats, listened with intense concentration as their mother explained the rules of turn-taking. Kate realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in Vorthak culture. Knowledge was being passed down from parent to child, but it was knowledge about compassion rather than hunting. The cubs were learning that sharing could be more valuable than taking. One of the new babies climbed onto the pillow and immediately curled up into a ball. Its grandmother made soft approving sounds that Matt translated as good comfort seeking and proper nest behavior. Amy joined Kate at the observation window. You know what this means, do not you? Amy said. We are watching the birth of a new Vorthak culture. These cubs will grow up with completely different values than their ancestors. Kate nodded. It was both thrilling and terrifying to realize the impact her simple act of kindness had created. By sharing her pillow with 3 scared cubs, she had started a revolution that was changing an entire species. Dr. Walsh approached with a concerned expression. Kate, we have a problem. The pillow is showing wear from all the use. The fabric is starting to thin in places. Kate felt a surge of panic. The pillow had already survived far longer than anyone expected, but it was not indestructible. What would happen to the program if it fell apart? We need to think about this carefully, Kate said. Maybe we can reinforce it somehow, or... She stopped talking as she watched the cubs interacting with the pillow. The newest babies were being taught by their older relatives to be gentle with the fabric. They were learning to retract their claws completely when touching it. They were developing an instinctive care for this object that represented everything their species was learning to value. No, Kate said finally. We let it wear out naturally. When it falls apart, that will be part of the lesson too. The cubs will learn that even precious things do not last forever, and that makes them more valuable, not less. Amy smiled. That might be the most profound thing you have ever said. As evening approached, the cubs reluctantly left the pillow and gathered with their families for the journey home. But Kate noticed something new in their behavior. Instead of immediately scattering to their separate territories, the different packs were staying together, sharing stories about their cubs' experiences. The grandmother approached Kate one final time before leaving. Through Matt's translation equipment, she spoke words that made Kate's eyes fill with tears. Thank you, Nest Tender, for teaching us that strength can be gentle and that giving can make us richer than taking. Our cubs will remember this place. Their cubs will remember this place. Your soft sleeping gift will live in our stories long after our teeth are dust. That night, Kate sat in her original quarters, which had been preserved exactly as it was during those first dramatic days. She held her worn pillow and thought about all the lives it had touched. Tomorrow, she would begin training new researchers to start comfort care programs on other worlds. The pillow would continue its work here on Kalara, teaching young predators that there was more to life than survival and dominance. Kate smiled as she placed the pillow on her bed one final time before packing for her journey. She had come to Kalara to study predator behavior, but instead she had discovered something much more important. She had learned that compassion was not a weakness to be exploited, but a strength that could transform entire civilizations. The pillow had shown both species that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply make room for someone else.